Harrington, professor at Albany Law School, a very prolific and thoughtful scholar on international matters, particularly those dealing with climate change and sustainability. Welcome, Alex. How
Thank
are
you so
you?
much. I'm very well. I'm glad to
Oh,
see you.
oh, fantastic. So what I wanted to talk about today was some of these weather events that have been disastrous. We saw a heat dome over the Pacific Northwest. We're witnessing what people are saying will be the worst drought in 1,200 years. California's Dixie Fire has surpassed records and is the single largest fire incident that we've seen in recorded history. Professor, what's going on here?
I think what we're finally starting to see in a really understandable way is that this is what happens with climate change. And that this is what happens when the prediction of having reach the different points that we can reach in terms of how warm it gets before we start to have really lasting damage comes into effect. And it's an unfortunate reality, but it's one that has been in many ways predicted.
Mhm.
That doesn't make it any easier, but that's what we're
Right.
seeing.
Well, now the IPCC recently issued another report on climate change. Can you tell us a little bit about what is the IPCC and why should we listen to them?
Absolutely, because it is a little bit kind of odd at first that we think about this large organization telling people what they should listen to for everything from their own personal practices, their daily lives and their consumerism, to what government should do. So the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, it often gets politicized. It is an international organization in itself. It was created by several different organizations together. It operates under the auspices of the UN, and its goal is not in any way as kind of politically fraught as it might seem. Its goal is to promote the understanding of climate change and the science behind it, and to provide us with reports, to provide us as scholars, but also as citizens, with an understanding of the current science and potential future science of climate change and what that means for our societies as we're starting to move forward. And also potentially with ways to stop it or to address things before they get any further along.
Okay. Well, now, so this was the sixth of the reports from IPCC, and what did it say about the cause of climate change? What are the main points that are made in this report?
So this report, which was extremely long, it was over 3,000 pages of reading and materials, with a lot of scientific background, but it said a lot of what we already know. It told us that the planet is warming, and it is warming way too much and way too fast. For the first time, really, we've seen, so the way the IPCC operates is to say things are likely, very likely, highly likely, or highly unlikely. So it's not an absolute, it's just much more kind of explanatory from a scientific perspective of how likely things are to occur, but also how likely things are to impact. And so what we've now seen is the first real, without any type of reservation, statement that humans have been very highly likely to have been the main driver of climate change and to continue to be the main driver of climate change,
Mm, okay.
which is a call for many governments and certainly many civil society groups and scholars to really kind of look at things and go, okay, we need to stop. We've known this for a while, but now we really understand that, yes, there may be other scientific forces at play as well, but people are the biggest challenge right now. And we've seen this kind of emerging throughout the other reports that the IPCC has issued, but this has been the most dramatic in terms of talking about the number of many of the things that you talked about: heat related issues, droughts, fires, the devastation that we're seeing to, ironically, in many places due to drought, and then in other places due to too much rain
Mm,
and due to really unusual weather patterns. that are damaging the biodiversity in areas and also causing compound weather events. So we'll see a drought that then results in other issues die off of biodiversity. We'll see a hurricane that then causes flooding, that then goes up the chain of crop damage and personal property damage, loss of life, et cetera. So very short-term and also long-term impacts. So we really now are getting a much better understanding from this report as to how desperately we need to act in order to fix things.
Yeah, this idea of cascading impacts, right, is something we really need to look out for.
Yeah.
Now, you know, it's an easy thing to read through this, especially the latest report, and get a little, upset or worried about our future. But what are the upsides? Are there things that we can be doing now to be prepared?
Absolutely. And so it is very disheartening often to read it, but the point, really key takeaway is that not only are we at a turning point potentially, but we can stop it. So there's actually a range that's laid out in the report in terms of the increase in temperature over time. And what we know from previous science, and actually the IPCC did basically an interim report in 2019 that told us what we thought we knew about if we raise temperature at 2 degrees Celsius was actually wrong. And that would be sufficient to basically offset a lot of potential damage down the road. That was actually wrong. And that we needed to lower it to 1.5 degrees. So that is very interesting in itself. But this particular report looks at emissions across different future developments, future times, on a modeling scale, and tells us that if we do start to cut back, if we really incorporate into our legal practices and our societal practices now, means to cut back emissions, to cut back on waste and reduce what we do as humans and as consumers, we can see the actual decrease in temperature over time to a point where it is sustainable. So that even by 2100 AD, when we will most likely not be here anymore, but we will be able to still have a sustainable planet. And the modeling suggests 3 different paths: one on low emissions, one on moderate emissions, and one on high emissions. And perhaps it's obvious that the high emissions does not look very good, but the medium and the low emissions levels for the future do actually give us hope that we can correct, but we have to act very quickly.
So it sounds like we might even rename this latest report Choosing Our Future.
Absolutely. No, definitely. And
Well,
it really is a call to do that in an apolitical way, in the sense of science telling us this is what you need to know, this is what we need to do, and then kind of shifting it to us as lawyers, as policymakers, as advocates to say, okay, this is what we know is a hard fact, and we have to translate it into a legal requirement.
Well, Alex, I want to thank you for speaking with us and giving us a lot of knowledge of what to think about with oncoming climate change. And I look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you very much. I look forward to continuing our discussion.